You believe your decisions are guided by logic. You believe you weigh options, consider consequences, and act rationally. You believe fear is something you feel only in extreme moments, when danger is obvious, when threats are visible. But fear does not wait for emergencies. It does not announce itself. Fear operates quietly, constantly, beneath the surface of everyday life. Long before you consciously decide anything, fear has already begun shaping the direction of your thoughts. It influences what you notice, what you ignore, what you consider possible, and what you immediately dismiss. Fear does not argue with reason. It bypasses it. And because of that, fear controls far more of your decisions than you are willing to admit. Fear is not a flaw in human design. It is not a weakness that needs to be eliminated. Fear is ancient. It evolved long before logic, long before language, long before society itself. For most of human history, fear was the difference between survival and death. It kept people alert, cautious, and responsive to danger. The problem is not that fear exists. The problem is that the brain still treats modern discomforts as if they were life-threatening threats. Rejection feels like danger. Uncertainty feels like danger. Failure feels like danger. And when the brain detects danger, it shifts control away from rational thinking and toward emotional survival mechanisms. In those moments, the goal is not truth. The goal is safety. When fear is triggered, the brain changes how it processes information. The rational mind slows down. The part of the brain responsible for careful analysis and long-term planning becomes less active. At the same time, the emotional system takes over. Attention narrows. The brain stops asking whether something is accurate or reasonable and starts asking whether it feels threatening. Under fear, nuance disappears. Complexity feels overwhelming. The brain seeks simple answers, quick relief, and immediate certainty. This is why fear makes people impatient. This is why fear pushes people toward extreme conclusions. And this is why decisions made under fear often feel urgent, even when there is no real-time pressure. Fear thrives on urgency. It creates the illusion that delay equals danger. Messages that involve fear almost always include a sense of immediacy. Act now. Don't miss this. Time is running out. Something terrible will happen if you wait. Under fear, the brain believes that hesitation is risky. Reflection feels unsafe. Thinking things through feels like exposure. So people act quickly, not because they are convinced, but because they are uncomfortable. Fear does not need evidence to be persuasive. It only needs possibility. The mere suggestion that something bad could happen is often enough to override careful judgment. This is why fear is so effective at shaping everyday decisions. Fear keeps people in jobs they hate, not because the job is good, but because leaving feels uncertain. Fear keeps people silent when they should speak, not because silence is right, but because conflict feels dangerous. Fear keeps people in unhealthy relationships, not because they are fulfilled, but because loneliness feels threatening. In these moments, people do not choose what they want. They choose what feels safest. Over time, fear narrows the range of choices a person is willing to consider. Life becomes less about desire and more about avoidance. Fear also makes control easier. When fear is high, people look for guidance. They crave certainty. Authority feels comforting because it promises direction in moments of confusion. This is why fear strengthens obedience. When people are afraid, they are more willing to accept instructions, explanations, and rules that they would normally question. Fear does not force people to obey. It invites them to. It offers relief in exchange for autonomy. And because the relief feels immediate, the cost often goes unnoticed. One of the most dangerous aspects of fear is that it disguises itself as protection. Fear promises safety, but it rarely delivers it. Decisions made to avoid fear often prevent growth, change, and fulfillment. Avoiding risk avoids failure, but it also avoids success. Avoiding discomfort avoids pain, but it also avoids progress. Over time, fear stops being a response to specific situations and becomes a way of life. People stop asking what they want and start asking what they should avoid. Identity slowly reshapes itself around fear-based choices. Fear feels convincing because it is physical. The body reacts before the mind has a chance to intervene. Heart rate increases, muscles tense, breathing becomes shallow. The brain interprets these sensations as confirmation that the threat is real. The intensity of fear is mistaken for accuracy. But intensity does not equal truth. Fear does not predict the future. It imagines it. It fills in unknowns with worst-case scenarios and presents them as likely outcomes. The brain, seeking certainty, accepts these imagined futures as warnings rather than possibilities. Fear also distorts memory. Past negative experiences become more vivid than positive ones. Failures feel more significant than successes. The mind recalls mistakes faster than achievements. This biased memory reinforces fear-based thinking. It convinces people that danger is more common than it actually is. And because the brain is trying to protect itself, it prioritizes avoiding pain over pursuing meaning. This is how fear quietly rewrites priorities. What makes fear particularly powerful is that it often operates below awareness. People rarely say, "I am making this decision because I am afraid." Instead, fear disguises itself as practicality, responsibility, realism, or caution. It sounds reasonable. It feels mature. It appears logical. But underneath these justifications lies the same emotional drive. Avoid discomfort. Avoid uncertainty. Avoid loss. Fear does not need to dominate openly. It only needs to influence quietly. Over time, repeated fear-based decisions reinforce themselves. Each avoided risk confirms the belief that avoidance was necessary. Each missed opportunity strengthens the idea that safety was the right choice. The brain learns from these patterns and becomes even quicker to default to fear in the future. What begins as a response becomes a habit. What begins as protection becomes limitation. Fear does not make people irrational. It makes them predictable. When fear controls decisions, behavior becomes easier to anticipate and influence. This is why fear is such a powerful tool in persuasion, marketing, and social control. Fear simplifies complex realities into emotional narratives. It reduces people to survival mode. And in survival mode, people trade long-term autonomy for short-term relief. Fear will never disappear. It is a permanent part of being human. The danger is not feeling fear. The danger is allowing fear to make decisions without being questioned. Fear can signal caution, but it should not dictate identity. When fear is unexamined, it quietly determines the shape of a person's life, where they go, who they become, and what they believe is possible. The most unsettling realization is not that fear influences decisions. It is that many of the choices people believe define them were shaped by fear long before they were consciously aware of it. The job accepted out of security. The relationship maintained out of comfort. The dream abandoned out of doubt. Fear does not always stop people. Sometimes it simply redirects them. The question is not whether fear controls your decisions. The question is, how many of your choices were ever truly yours? This is the psychology code